The International Olympic Committee announced that the 1992 Games would be hosted by Albertville, France for the Winter Games and Barcelona for the summer, and that following this Olympiad, the two games would separate, with Summer Games continuing to happen every leap year and Winter Games in the alternate even-numbered years. This meant that there would be an extra Winter Olympics in 1994, with the venue to be announced. Samora Machel, the first president of independent Mozambique, died in a plane crash on his way back from a summit in Zambia. Investigations concluded that the crash was due to pilot error, but in the era of both Cold War and apartheid tensions, the death of a prominent Soviet-aligned Marxist black leader right on the South African border led to suspicions of foul play that have never entirely gone away. The Metro Centre was officially opened at Gateshead on Tyneside, just outside Newcastle, in the northeast of England. It was one of the first American-style megamalls in Europe and was the largest on the continent when it opened. Big Bang Day happened on the London Stock Exchange as the Thatcher government's promised deregulation and modernisation of the stock market came into force, including the computerisation of the exchange, lifting the ban on non-UK traders, and other changes to the rules of trading in stocks and shares. In the short term, London boomed as an economic powerhouse, though in the longer term this deregulation has been blamed at least in part for the financial crash of 2007-8. Margaret Thatcher also officially opened the M25 motorway, London's orbital ring road. In 1964, a plan called Ringways had been announced to give London 4 concentric circular motorway rings, but the M25 ended up being the only one built. The road was initially popular with road users, but it soon became obvious that its capacity was woefully inadequate for the amount of traffic generated, and it became something of a national joke. And a year after first airing Down Under, Australian soap opera Neighbours was first shown in the UK and quickly became a huge hit. British attention was also focused on Australia as the nation, hungry for some sporting success after the disappointment of the World Cup and a run of defeats in the cricket, looked to Nigel Mansell to become Britain's first Formula One world champion since James Hunt 10 years earlier. He certainly headed to Adelaide in a much stronger position than John Watson had been in 1982, the last time a Brit had been in the running at the end of the season. Meanwhile in Brazil, Nelson Piquet's army of fans were hoping he could bring home his third world title, amid accusations that the Williams team were favouring Mansell and even deliberately sabotaging Nelson. Frank Williams, Patrick Head and Nigel Mansell, of course, vehemently denied any such thing, and the team went to great lengths to prove their even-handed treatment. But there were many who felt that Piquet should be the number one driver, and equal treatment was as good as favouring Nigel. Alain Prost, meanwhile, had said after the Portuguese Grand Prix that he accepted the title was probably Mansell's this year, but was still in the running to do what nobody had done since Jack Brabham in 1959-60 and win 2 world titles on the trot. Elsewhere, it had been announced that Thierry Boutsen would replace his former Arrows teammate Gerhard Berger at Benetton for 1987, and there were many other drivers who had yet to secure a berth for next year and would be hoping to take their last chance to impress. Keke Rosberg would be driving his last Grand Prix before retirement, and there were strong rumours that the Haas-Lola team would also be making its swan song here, as the Beatrice food firm had pulled the plug, and the Ford turbo engine was allegedly moving to Benetton, which, if true, meant that it would also probably be local hero Alan Jones's last race. The 1985 Australian Grand Prix had been an entertaining affair with a relaxed end-of-term party feel, with both championships already decided, but this year there was a 3-way fight for the driver's title to be decided, and there were 150,000 packed into the stands to watch the fireworks. Qualifying was, as expected, a battle for pole between Senna and the Williams boys, and it would be an all-Williams front row on this occasion, with Mansell pipping Piquet to the top spot by 0.3 seconds, with Senna third and Prost fourth. The Frenchman grinning when he saw the times. Ha! 3 guys ahead of me, and they all hate each other. René Arnoux had a good day in the Ligier in 5th, with Berger 6th, Rosberg 7th, and Alliot 8th. The Ferraris were 9th, Alboreto, and 12th, Johansson, sandwiching Streff and De Cesaris, both doing unusually well. Fabi and the other Benetton was back in 13th alongside Dumfries. Jones would start his potentially last race in 15th. A disastrous weekend for the Brabhams saw them lining up on row 10, ahead only of the Zack Speeds, Arrowses and Ozellas. And so audiences in Britain and France got up eye-wateringly early, while those in Brazil just didn't go to bed, and tuned in for the big season showdown as 26 cars took the formation lap with cameras mounted on Johnny Dumfries' Lotus and Patrick Tombé's Haas Lola, both drivers facing an uncertain future in F1. The lights went green and Mansell had into the lead as Senna snatched second, while Arnoux was very slow away, leading to some bumping in the midfield as everyone squeezed past him, but allowing Rosberg to leap up to fourth ahead of Prost. As they came round the back straight, Senna challenged for the lead as Rosberg simultaneously went for Piquet, and by the time the cameras caught up with them again, the Lotus was in front, with Piquet now second and Mansell third. Soon Nigel was another place down, as Rosberg muscled his way past in the infield, and Prost started looking for a way past too. On the Jack Brabham straight, Piquet pulled out to pass Senna to make it 3 leaders within a lap. So at the end of an eventful first lap, it was Piquet, Senna and Rosberg all together, then Mansell, Prost and Berger, with Streff 7th and leading the rest as Alboreto toured in, having damaged his suspension in the start line fracas. René Arnoux also came in for repairs. Piquet began to pull away from Senna, who was still fending off a lively Rosberg. The Finn had suddenly and inexplicably found that the McLaren was working for him on Sunday the way it hadn't all season, and soon he was past Senna into second. He quickly began closing on Piquet, and both were leaving Senna behind. Mansell took third a couple of laps later, putting himself where he needed to be for the championship, but there was still a long way to go. While the cameras watched Nigel for a bit, Rosberg got ahead of Piquet and took the lead, the first time he'd led in a McLaren. While he would no doubt be keen to repeat his 1985 Adelaide win and sign off his 114-race career with a 6th victory, doing so would hand the title to Mansell, and most expected that he would move over for Prost if it came to it. Rosberg quickly pulled out a big lead over Piquet as Nannini demolished his Minardi with a big shunt, and Prost got past Mansell off camera and began to slowly reel in Piquet. As they came through traffic, Prost caught Piquet while Jones pulled out with a smoking engine, and Dumfries had a spin on the oil dropped by the stricken Ford, capturing the moment on his in-car camera. As he recovered, Piquet and Prost surged past, engaging in their battle for second place, some 14 seconds behind Rosberg, with Mansell running on his own now, about 5 seconds behind the pair of them, and Senna in 5th having dropped back dramatically to 38 seconds behind the leader. Prost followed Piquet for lap after lap as the right-hand tyres on the Williams started to grain, until on lap 23 Nelson spun, nearly collected Mansell as he recovered, and Prost was up into second place. But now Mansell was third, which would still be good enough for the title even if Rosberg let Prost through for the win. Prost was certainly going for the win, getting the hammer down and whittling down the 18-second lead that Rosberg had by now built up. He broke the lap record on lap 25, and then did it 3 more times in the next 5 laps, cutting 4 seconds out of Keke's lead and pulling out a gap of 9 seconds over Mansell by lap 30. Such was the furious pace that everyone up to 6th-placed Johansson had already been lapped by Keke Rosberg some 10 laps before half-distance. And then disaster struck for Prost. A puncture saw him come in on lap 33. Difficulties getting the jack under the dragging nose meant that it was a slow stop, and he boiled out of the pit lane after 17 seconds stationary, rejoining 4th and some 20 seconds behind Piquet. As Prost put his foot down to make up lost ground, Goodyear technicians examined the set of tyres he'd taken off and concluded that, puncture aside, they were in pretty good nick and would probably have lasted the race. They let the other Goodyear running teams know, and most of them elected to cancel any planned tyre stops in the light of this new information, so it would just be a straight race to the finish. That being the case, the only thing that could really stop Rosberg signing off his career win would be a recurrence of his mechanical bad luck, while Mansell, sitting pretty in second, looked even stronger for the title. Piquet, however, wasn't going to give up just yet, and he was on a charge. By lap 40, about half distance, he'd got right up behind his teammate, and Mansell simply shrugged and let him go past, not needing to fight for the position, though he didn't let Piquet head off into the distance and stayed in touch. Senna, having pitted and dropped behind Johansson, then dropped out with a dead Renault on lap 43, but apart from a trickle of retirements, things had settled down a bit. Prost had the bit between his teeth and was trying to catch the Williams twins, while Patrese had inherited 6th from Senna and now made his way up to 5th past Johansson. And all the while, Rosberg lapped away smoothly in the lead, maintaining a gap of just under half a minute over Piquet and responding when Nelson sped up, looking very much his old self. Prost caught up to the Williamses, putting the three title contenders right together on the track, though Piquet was able to pull away a bit as Mansell started having to defend against Prost. On lap 62, Rosberg felt a bang at the back of his car and, thinking his engine had gone, pulled over. As he looked at the car, he could see that his right rear tyre had delaminated and the bodywork along that side of the car was a bit of a mess. Thinking his engine had gone, pulled over. As he looked at the car, he could see that his right rear tyre had delaminated and the bodywork along that side of the car was a bit of a mess. Good news for Mansell then, who could now lose the place to Prost and still be champion, which was just as well because Prost took the place a lap later. And then, as Patrick Head and co debated whether to bring their drivers in for precautionary stops in light of Rosberg's blowout,
and look at that! Out that, and colossally, that's Mansell! That is Nigel Mansell, and the car absolutely shattered. He's fighting for control, and you can see what's happened.
Nigel was out, scarcely able to believe it, and Williams had a dilemma. Should they bring Piquet in for tyres before the same thing happened to him, even though he was currently leading the race and the championship? Patrick Head made the call, and in he came. The stop was quick, but Prost sailed by into the lead, and had, of course, already changed his tyres earlier in the race. With 15 laps left, Piquet had new rubber and a gap of 15 seconds to make up. Behind them, Streff and Brundle were now running third and fourth. The French driver had finished third here last year, of course, after nearly taking out his then teammate Jacques Lafitte. Johansson, running fifth, was charging after the Tyrrells despite an excursion over the curbs late on, while Prost stretched out an even greater lead over Piquet, who seemed to have either given it up as pointless or been forced to ease off due to fuel issues. Johansson caught Brundle as Streff ahead of him put another lap on Dumfries and passed the Englishman on the penultimate lap, and then they both went past Streff as he ran dry on the last lap. So did Brundle, but he at least managed to cross the line first. But it was Alain Prost who crossed the line first to take both the race win and the 1986 World Championship against all expectations. Bitter disappointments for Mansell and Rosberg, while Piquet's second place wasn't quite enough to take the overall runner-up spot from Mansell. So, Prost celebrated on the top step of the podium, with Piquet and Johansson alongside, and then Brundle, Streff and Dumfries making up the points places. An F111 fighter jet of the RAAF did a low pass over the track as the drivers made their way to the podium for the prize giving. Stefan Johansson's third place was enough to secure his fifth place in the championship, best of the rest, behind the so-called Gang of Four, and squeezing out the luckless Rosberg, which would be a boost to the Swedes' hopes of securing a good drive in 1987, having been dropped by Ferrari in favour of Berger. A couple of days after the race, the staff of the Haas Lola team were informed it was all over, after just one full season with such high hopes, which left both Alan Jones and Patrick Tambay and a raft of talented engineers, designers and mechanics out of a job. But tonight, the party would be at the McLaren garage, with Prost taking the title and Williams failing to beat McLaren's all-time points record from 1984. Over at Williams, meanwhile, there would be some questions asked. Soichiro Honda himself was in Adelaide to watch one of his drivers crowned champion, and was reported to be unhappy that Williams hadn't prioritised Piquet, whose retainer was after all largely being paid by Honda. Patrick Head, meanwhile, would be asking some questions of his own to the Goodyear technicians, and all concerned were left to rue what might have been.